Well, you are just in time to talk trunk lids here for first-gen F-body cars. Which ones fit the best? How do you make them fit more good when they don't fit quite right? Well, that's what we're going to get into here today. Of course, as you can tell, the garage door is shut because it's Indiana. Yes, last week I was out here working in shorts and a t-shirt and almost got my Speedo out because it's actually super warm. Thought I needed to go for a swim, but today, 42 degrees of not warm. So the door is shut. So unfortunately, we're going to be cooped back up inside the garage, but we can still make some headway here on the Great Pumpkin. As you can tell here behind me, I got the EDP coating stripped off. That is definitely a hardcore, definite 100% must when doing a car. Remove that EDP coating off there. On some occasions, on super rare occasions, I found some rust underneath that stuff. So it's great for transport and storage, but as for your final paint, I don't recommend scuffing and shooting over top of it. But while doing all that, got the thing dialed in, got the trunk lid fitted to this car, and it is an AMD brand trunk deck. And I will tell you, as for all the ones I've purchased and replaced besides the original equipment one, these have been the best fitting ones I've ever purchased. And to put it in perspective, this trunk opening on this car is 100% 1968. We did do quarter skins on it, but we did not get into the trunk opening on this car. So there is no modifications to this here, so this would be a good representation. I'll show you the gap currently. It looks really nice, but even with that said, it has some things that we're going to do some fine tuning on. The gap, the height isn't quite right in some of the spots. Not the end of the world. Super easy modification. All you'll need is a 5/8 spark plug socket, some kind of a straight edge to judge where we're at, a hammer, a chunk of 2x4, and an orange Mountain Dew for me. But if you guys want to see how it's done, stay tuned. Well, let's start with the good. This is literally out of the box, bolted on the car, did nothing to the trunk hinge modifications, nothing whatsoever besides bolted on in the factory locations, and then just the typical adjustment. You got forward, back, side to side, all around, whatever. You can adjust most of that out. And this is the gaps that I was able to achieve by just bolting it onto this car. Nice, even gap all around the whole thing here. Nothing really changes. Nothing, as for it doesn't get wider, skinny, or anything like that. So that looks fantastic. Even across the back of the car, the gap in between the actual tail panel and the trunk lid looks great. Now, this is an AMD. Now, this one here, I don't remember what brand it is. This is on my 69 Bird. This is an original radius on the quarter panel. I put quarter skins on it, but as you can tell, it gets super tight right here, and it's not an even gap. It doesn't line up very good. I've actually already added metal to the edge of it here to dial this gap in. So I'm debating scrapping this thing here and purchasing another AMD for my Bird over there. But enough of all that. But even with all this said, that adjustment looks great. But there's one problem that I just don't really like. I'm using the magnets to hold this thing shut, but this here's the same height right here in the back. So we're nice and even when we get down here. If you look at that right across, looks great. Come up here to the front corner. If you look across the whole side of the car, between the filler panel and the trunk deck, nice and good. But when we get down here to the side here, well, look at this. My trunk deck is higher than my quarter panel. Well, there isn't any kind of mechanical bolt adjustment for that, but we can persuade this trunk deck into shape. We can take the thing down or up, depending on which way we need to go. But we're going to get this thing down quite a bit. Let me show you how that's done. Okay, this is where our block of wood comes into play here. We're going to use this to lay it on the trunk deck, so when I'm hitting it, I don't dent the metal or reduce the chance of denting the metal. So what we're going to do is kind of lay it flat like this and really just give it a pretty solid hit. Now, it's pretty high from end to end, so we can hit it pretty good here, and we'll see what happens. Now, let's see our results. Well, heck, I almost got it already. Looks good here. Looks good here. Still a little high all across the middle. We'll go ahead and just give it one more good whack. One more hit maybe right here. And looks better back here, but I think we still have a little bit of a spot right there. So we'll do the same thing right here one more time. That's a pretty good solid hit. Put these back. Now let's take a look. Well, heck, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're making some progress. Just a little bit right there. Now, it's kind of hard to say how much force to hit it with, but probably better to go not enough than hit it later a little harder than anything. But this thing is really dialing in now. Right here just a little bit. Now, this is also the reason why you do this before you paint the car, because obviously probably going to damage the paint if you did that too much. All the prep work is vital here, but that's looking really good now. Let me get you in real close. This is what the purpose of the little straight edge is. Whatever you can find is nice and straight, but what you can use in case you can't tell for sure with your eyes or feel it, but look at this. The gap between my trunk deck and the quarter panel now is the same elevation. Same elevation, same elevation, looking really good now on the gap. Now, of course, it has a, in the quarter panel, a little dip right here. That's normal, but the actual opening heights, what I'm going after right now, those look fantastic. Now, this is the side we've already obviously worked on. The driver's side, we've done nothing besides I bolted this trunk deck on, and this is the kind of gap that we had. And this is how you can visualize maybe a little better what we have to work with, but you can tell there's definitely a height difference. Now, it doesn't take all that much to dial this gap back in, but I've seen a lot of cars that are painted and have a gap like this, but you just saw 30 seconds and just a hammer and a block of wood, we've dialed this thing back in super straight. And then we're doing this before paint, so if we did happen to blemish or ding or dent or cause any kind of deviations in the metal. Now, of course, we still have Mr. Socket here. That was one of the things that I don't think I'm going to need on this particular car, but let's just use your imagination. Let's say this trunk deck was lower than the quarter panel, or maybe we hit it too hard. We got too big of a hammer out and smacked it too hard. What the socket's for is pretty simple. You lay it in the channel here, take the trunk deck, you can actually smack it here, lay the block of wood flat, not on the edge, or bring it in a little bit, and smack it this way, and it'll actually bring the edge up. You can do the same thing all across the leading edge. So any place that the metal of the trunk deck is too low, and then the socket works great because it's actually a whole lot longer. You can probably put 2 or 3 sockets if you really wanted to, but I like working one small area at a time so you can visualize. So leave the block of wood maybe about this far in and smack it, and it'll bring that edge up. Because what we're working on is just changing the height of the edge of this panel up and down is all we're trying to do. So I'm going to do the exact same thing over here. You'll see how simple it really is. Chunk of wood. Right there, just a little bit. If you want to really make sure, looks good. A little bit right there. So we need to hit right here on that corner. I think it'll do. Simple as that. So why would you not spend the additional 3 to 5 minutes just to smack that thing around, straighten it up to get where it shuts like this here. Look at that, on the same plane now, nice and even. And I don't feel any deviations or dents here in the trunk deck, so I think it may have survived. That's why we use the block of wood to help displace it so it doesn't leave a dent in the edge. But even when we do the high build primer and guide coat, we might find something. But even then, we're talking just minimal time to really bring the car to the next level, and you see how easy it was. Now, of course, we still have Mr. Socket here. That was one of the things that I don't think I'm going to need on this particular car, but let's just use your imagination. Let's say this trunk deck was lower than the quarter panel, or maybe we hit it too hard. We got too big of a hammer out and smacked it too hard. What the socket's for is pretty simple. You lay it in the channel here, take the trunk deck, you can actually smack it here, lay the block of wood flat, not on the edge, or bring it in a little bit, and smack it this way, and it'll actually bring the edge up. You can do the same thing all across the leading edge. So any place that the metal of the trunk deck is too low, and then the socket works great because it's actually a whole lot longer. You can probably put 2 or 3 sockets if you really wanted to, but I like working one small area at a time so you can visualize. So leave the block of wood maybe about this far in and smack it, and it'll bring that edge up. Because what we're working on is just changing the height of the edge of this panel up and down is all we're trying to do. So there you go, super easy tip. I hope you found value in that, how easy it is to spend a few extra minutes right now to dial these body panels in to a much better condition, so when it's all done, you have a car that just really sets it off between some of the other cars on the show field or just cruising. And it's so simple. I know I said 100 times, I'm trying to convince you that it's worth investing the few extra minutes. I know it's 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes there. It does add up, but I'm telling you that by the time it's all done, the 3 to 4 extra hours in prep work will really set your car apart, and it was definitely worth it. So almost got this thing all body worked out. I don't have a whole lot of spots to tape. I got one here on the roof I keep forgetting to do. Got a little bit of filler work yet to do there, but we're about ready to put this thing in a high build primer and do our final blocking, and then sealer coat and paint. So we're getting super close. So if you haven't subscribed already, you find these tips helpful and useful in your restoration, please do help me out. I like to see this channel continue to grow. Really getting close to 5,000 mark. We're kind of plateaued off a little bit, but I know it's going to take off again with your guys' help, and I appreciate you helping me on my journey and my dream, and I'm hoping to help you with yours just the same. But anyway, I'll grab the camera. I'm not sure 100% what part of the bodywork stage I'll get into, but if there's any part you would like to see, we're just about wrapped up with doing all the prep work, let me know, because once we're past that, well, I'm sure I'll have another car, but it'll be some time before we get back to this stage of the build. So, done enough for this. Get the camera, get figured out what I'm going to do next time around, and I hope to see you guys then.